before we get going, point of executive order. I believe tonight's meeting is being recorded for posterity.
Yeah, it is.
I just hit record.
Right. So just be aware that our meeting tonight is being recorded. It is a public meeting, and as recorded things go up on the internet, they're there forever. So just, you know, just be aware.
Behave yourself.
So the first order of the first agenda item, or the first item on the agenda, is to approve the meetings from the minutes from last month's meeting, the June 18 meeting. I think Danny just sent them out a few hours ago. So everyone had a chance to look at them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes, Jonathan.
Just one very, very minor issue. Just a correction of one word in the treasurer's report in the last sentence. It refers to us agreeing to keep the fund should remain in the, it says the company bank account. I think we meant the committee bank account.
Yeah, thank you.
That's all.
Okay. Does anyone want to put forward a motion?
I move the minutes as amended.
I'll second that.
Okay. Elise, I think we're going to do this on a voice vote. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? No, the ayes have it. Moving on to the next item, agenda item, that would be the treasurer's report, and I will ask Kathy to take that on.
Okay. Checking has $755. Savings is $69,326. The fund checking has $200, and the fund savings has $218,535.
Kathy, that got broken at 535?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we're up $270. We got a donation for $240 recently.
Nice.
That's it.
Is there a total, Kathy?
So is the total?
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
$288,817.
all right. So any comments or questions on the report?
No.
No? Okay.
We're rich.
Thank you, Kathy. I would be remiss, I think, and I was at the beginning of our meeting, not to acknowledge our visitors to our meeting. We have a couple of staff members. Elise, who is acting as our moderator for this group, which he has done before. And Sean Condry is also here. And I believe we have a number of other visitors. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
I just unmuted Eileen Burke. And we have a caller that has the last phone number 4439. So if you want to introduce yourselves, you can.
And Scott Schneider is here with Public Works too.
Oh, and Scott Schneider, right, sorry.
Okay. The caller who with 4439, you don't have to by any stretch of the imagination, but if you want to announce yourself. Okay, moving on. The next agenda item, as written in the agenda, is to consider possible donation of 2 picnic tables to be installed in open space. And I don't know who's leading the discussion on that agenda item.
I can do that.
All right. Do you want to do that,
Brian?
Brian?
Yeah. I can't remember exactly when it was, maybe 6 months ago, maybe a little more. I was contacted by an Eagle Scout candidate who was looking for a project. And I think the Boy Scouts directed him to me. And what he wanted to do was put 2 picnic tables on top of D Hill. And I said that we had put one up there and it got vandalized and destroyed. So I wasn't sure if we wanted to do that again. But we have talked in the past, or I have talked in the past about putting a picnic table on Red Hill. And so I thought that might be a project. And that was the way it sat. But in those days we weren't meeting. That's right. It was very early in the shutdown. So we weren't meeting. So he contacted me about a week ago and said, is anything happening on this? So I said I'd put it on the agenda and we could discuss it. Basically, I think he's available for whatever project we want. But I think a picnic table on Red Hill would be nice. I just thought we could discuss that.
If I might, excuse me, this is Jonathan. May I? So I just want to remind everybody that, last year, after our consideration and recommendations, the town council adopted the policy for improvements in open space, which is now in effect. So just to review the process for this kind of thing, if one was to propose a donation or an installation of a man-made structure in open space, it would be submitted to the Director of Building and Public Works Director for screening. It would then be referred to the Open Space Committee, which would then make a recommendation to the Town Council. And then we have adopted review criteria, which hopefully everybody has a copy of our policy that we adopted, but if not, I can send that around again. But just to remind everybody that we now have, this process in place.
And does it say we should go to the building before open
It's
space?
supposed to go to the Director of Building and the Public Works Director first.
Okay.
It says open space improvements will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. The Director of Building and Public Works shall initially screen donation and improvement proposals to determine if they comply with this policy. The Director shall refer the proposal to the San Anselmo Open Space Committee. The Open Space Committee shall review the proposed improvements and make an advisory recommendation. And it goes on from there, but essentially we then advise the Town Council.
But don't we have the director available at this meeting right now?
Yeah. And I wanted to also note too that a lot of, when we had the issue with the Memorial Park Trail, that the top of Red Hill is actually private property. So it may be one of those items that actually doesn't need review by the town if that property owner wanted to have it there.
That's correct. Yeah.
I believe it's on town property.
Oh, you're right. The part you're talking about is town property, Brian. Yeah, I think I know where you want to put she's thinking of the part on David Hood's property, I think, over on the far left or whatever you want
Yeah.
to say.
I think there's room for a, like a smallish or maybe standard sized picnic table just beyond the rock outcropping, when you climb up there, there's an area there under the trees. It's fairly small, and I don't know for sure if that's on town property. It's possible it's on the Cedars property because they all come together up there.
Yeah.
And then there's one little triangle owned by the Water District too.
Yeah.
I think though the area you're talking about, the triangle, I think there's kind of a point up there. I think if you went to the right of that point, you'd be okay.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
So just, if I might jump in and also interject from the criteria that we adopted. This is would be my concern about that location. Criteria number C is the location offers easy observation from commonly used facilities, frequented trails, etc., to reduce the likelihood of negative use. So I'm just, my concern about the top of Red Hill is that could provide a convenient spot for numerous activities that maybe we wouldn't be so excited about, and could lead to maybe litter and more management problems.
So Brian, do you want to is this agendized right now? I guess this item is on the agenda.
It is.
So do you want to?
I didn't realize that we're supposed to go to Public Works before he applies here. I mean, we can just tell the scout to, write to you.
Yeah, but it'd be nice if maybe you can be the liaison. We can talk about it with him and look at the criteria and go from there. I would tell you, I mean, I've been up there. I've had picnics up there sitting on the rocks, which I've enjoyed quite a bit, actually.
Mhm.
And, you know, I don't think a table would attract any other nuisance, but I got to look at all the criteria, as Jonathan said, because I don't have them memorized.
Okay.
So,
Jonathan, does it have to be natural looking, like
Correct.
the benches are supposed to be natural looking?
There's language to that effect in here also. It says, benches and picnic tables must be of a size, design, and construction which complement the natural features of the area where the bench or table will be installed. Benches made of simple split logs, log rounds, and natural boulders are encouraged. Picnic tables constructed of redwood are encouraged.
Okay, so you can envision a table that actually looks like a table and not a log, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's
Redwood.
provided for in there.
Well, I think the Eagle Scout could really take this on with the design criteria and come up with something pretty imaginative and you know, unique.
Unique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and if he wants to start with an example, there's a whole bunch of brand new redwood tables in the new park downtown. So, but he can make it more individual.
Yeah, the one we put up on D Hill was a pre-made one. I think the Sonoma prisoners made it. And so there, you know, it was just a matter of transporting it up there and installing it. So that's one option. But yeah, an Eagle Scout project can be pretty complex, and part of it is to organize it and, you know, do any red tape, I think. So you can put him through his paces, Sean.
Okay,
So,
well, if you
But
want
the
to,
agenda item said 2, so we're talking about 1 at the top of Red Hill. What was the second location? That would
Don't
be,
know. I'm not sure why he said 2, but his original plan was to put 2 tables on D Hill. I suppose, you know, do people have an opinion on putting a table on D Hill?
I would say again that a lot of D Hill is actually private property, so I'm happy to share like the aerial maps with you, but we just want to make sure that we're getting approval from the private property owners.
Yeah, it would, if it's by the trash can there under the tree, I think it's on town property, but we'd have to confirm that. I know the bench is not on town property.
so for purposes of this agenda item, is there anything the committee needs to do at this point, or just refer it to the director for review?
I think pretty clearly the thing to do is to have Brian get back with the Eagle Scout and maybe arrange some kind of communication with Sean and go through these initial stages and then get a little more refined and specific, and then maybe the next meeting we can then really delve into it.
yeah, and we could even go up there, Brian, and look at the spots if you want.
All right. I'll try to set that up with the scout.
Yeah, I always
This is
like
Renee.
Yeah,
field trips that involve walking. So.
can I
Can we-
just,
Wait.
Can we think of a good spot for a second table?
The D Hill location is probably really bad. That the table got destroyed, and I think the same thing would probably happen.
It sounds like someone has their computer and phone on. There's a
Yeah,
lot of-
Renee, your audio is really bad.
I have a
Yeah,
question.
sorry.
If we have two, either 1 or 2, are they movable up there? In other words, can they be fixed?
we have some kind of technical problem here.
Yeah, it's
Can't hear
Renee.
It's fixed.
Okay. So, Nate,
Can I respond to Karin's question?
well, first off, what did Nancy say? Because you were I didn't hear you.
Oh, I was wondering whether 1 or 2, whether they're fixed in one spot, that they can't be moved. Because I'm thinking if they're having 2, then people might put them together and have an even bigger group there, and just in general, even if there's 1, is it going to be unmovable?
Nancy, can I answer that? Yeah, we need to fix these in some way with either a concrete slab or with some stakes so that they aren't vandalized, so that people don't turn them over, roll them down the hill.
Okay,
that kind of thing.
okay, thanks.
The one we put on D Hill, we just put it on a long chain that was padlocked to a tree. So they could move it around. The idea was that some people want to sit in the sun and some want to sit in the shade. But they couldn't take it away. But they still foiled us. They disassembled it and cut it up with a chainsaw.
Yeah, I'm hoping the Eagle Scout comes up with something imaginative and creative, and maybe even like blends into the hillside. I mean, takes it on as some kind of creative task, rather than just putting in a redwood table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
How about one on Calici's property?
On what?
Calici. Jonathan knows the Calici property.
Oh, on the Bald Hill Preserve.
Yeah. We can't do it at Sky Ranch, correct?
No.
And can I add something?
Anything that would happen in the Bald Hill Preserve would have to be approved by the Marin Open Space District, since they own all that property.
Can I add
I don't think they're really keen on improvements.
Okay.
Okay, Sean wants to say something.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that, like, right now, like, if you look at what we're doing, like on the avenue, with shutting down the avenue, we put tables out. With COVID-19, I think it is important to provide other places for people to go where they don't have to be around a lot of people. And, part of it, like being out in open space and on a table, it also helps with somebody, if we have a whole complete street policy and ADA transition time. Tables are something that help people who may not be able to walk as far to take a break. It's easier to sit at a bench than it is sometimes on rocks. So there is I think another aspect of this that is providing something for people who may not want to go walking and then sitting on rocks, or may want a place where they can sit down and have lunch outside in a safe space. So I think that is an important part of this to be taken under consideration. I just want to add that.
Sean, we had also talked about that with the benches, that the sort of aging initiatives for
Yes.
getting people who are older to have that. So there are lots of considerations for that as well.
Yeah, I know my mom would talk if there were more benches.
So actually, that's in the review criteria. There's an item A that says that we will consider factors such as the following. Will serve to encourage the use of open space by all ages, such as a bench located to serve as a resting place along a trail. There's other criteria as well. So that is part of what we already have established.
We are wandering off of the agenda item here, though, with our.
Yes.
How about a bench at another table at Sorge?
Well,
In the
Brian,
Redwood Grove?
Well, I think there's already 2 tables there already.
but Brian has already been tasked with meeting with the Eagle Scout to discuss what he wants to do, and meet with Sean to get the next step going on this.
Yeah, it's helpful for me to have some ideas though, because I'm not really eager for one on D Hill. I just, kind of had a bad experience with the other one, and there's a place to sit. And the bench is big enough to eat. So I don't know what you think, Renee, about a table on D Hill.
Yeah, I would prefer not to have another table up there. It
Okay.
just causes more problems than it's worth.
Agreed.
You might, Brian, you might talk to the Eagle Scout to see if a bench would serve his purposes as well. A picnic table on one and a bench maybe on Memorial Ridge.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Another possible site is at the bottom of the Red Hill Trail, like on the top of that rock formation. That might be a table spot or a bench spot.
True enough, Brian, that's not a bad idea. However, that is, as we know, potentially a homeless congregation area.
Yeah, you're right, but it's been cleaned up a lot since the trail's been there. We're having a lot fewer problems, and that's a great lookout point. Although I do know a herd of deer that sleep there at night too. So.
Park's closed at night.
Is that at the bottom of the trail?
Yeah.
Yeah, just past the kiosk.
Oh, okay. That's not a bad idea.
But if people eat their lunch there and leave scraps behind, then the deer got a little extra, right?
Okay, that gives me some ideas. I'll get back with the scout.
All right. I
Cool.
think we're kind of floundering here on this agenda item. I think Brian and Sean have a good idea of where we're going on this. So unless there's anybody objects, I'm going to move on to the next agenda item. Okay. And that's the update on the status of the Storage Park staging area. And I'm assuming that's why Sean's here, right?
Part of it, I think, a couple of things probably.
So who wants to lead on this one?
You want to talk about it, Renee, or you want me to talk about it?
Well, I'll
If
start
you don't
off
mind,
and,
if it's okay, can I just jump in at the beginning?
Yes,
This is
John.
Jonathan.
go ahead.
So just as a lead up, this was something that was discussed at our last meeting during open time, so we put it on the agenda, and it was something that was brought up as a result of a staging of some slurry seal equipment on the staging area, which was removed, and a certain amount of cleanup has been done. But this is just to really follow up on what the outcome of that was, and if the kind of to consider the sufficiency of the condition of the staging area as how it was left.
Right.
So, Sean, do you want to
Yeah.
just kind of review?
Yeah, I can. So we walked it. I think I don't know when it was, Renee. It was like 6 months ago, maybe, or
Probably, yeah.
yeah. We all walked up there, and we basically agreed that we would try to minimize the use of that area for emergency projects, or if there is some big project the town needed to do, then we would let open space know. And I completely agree with that, and I think we can really minimize its use by either using the parking lot as much as possible. That's before, which would then eliminate parking for people there, but they could also park on the outside and walk in, obviously. And then we can also use the courtyard, which is what I actually prefer doing. There is a problem with the courtyard, just so everybody knows. That the issue is when they built the warehouse, they put it in such an angle that the roof overhangs the path for trucks, and so you can't get around. I'm looking at shifting a retaining wall back so we can get bigger trucks in there. So that's part of the issue. It wasn't well thought out in terms of getting large vehicles back in there. There's a corner where we have bioretention and a green waste pad and two Quonset huts, and we can do work in there. We actually have done slurry seals, but it's a little bit more complicated. And with this last job, I guess it wasn't the county, it was a contractor that worked for the county, asked some of the crew out there if they could use the courtyard, and they said yes. They thought they were, the county wanted it apparently, but then they shifted up to the upper area, and I'm not sure if they were given permission or they just did it, but it happened. And I put a squash on that from happening in the future without a little bit more thought going into it, and following what I spoke to Renee and Jonathan about, and maybe Brian was there too. So in terms of its use, I think we can minimize it. I will say though that it is a very important area, especially for landslides. There's off to the right, whenever we have used it, I've tried to keep everybody to the right, but sometimes contractors can get loosey-goosey. But with the landslides, one year we had like 30 landslides, and we did bring 2 or 3 of them there. And sometimes we use it as a stage, like a temporary dumping area, and then we scoop it off and take it out, or we spread it out. A lot of it's just native soil. So it does need to be used like that sometimes. And I know there's a plan out there to put trees in, which I'm all for. But to make sure that it is accessible for emergency projects at least, because there could be something that happens that we need it for. But I do think we can utilize the parking lot or courtyard more with the caveat that if we use the parking lot, then people won't be able to park during a project for a few days or a week, whatever it is. And I know the soil that's left there now, I was kind of shocked. I was telling Renee this when I saw it, because it's very dark. And so you've got this really, Scott, is it decomposed granite, or is it
It's decomposed crushed granite, so
Yeah.
it's actually little rocks.
Yeah. So Renee and I talked about maybe I'm actually trying to reach the contractor that did it to see if I can put the onus on them to actually remove it and shift it. And we talked about maybe putting it actually in the parking lot area, because it could help fill a lot of voids and stuff over there. It's kind of a rough area. So we can look at doing that. I'm actually, you know, either I can get the contractor to do it or we can do it ourselves too. So I don't mind doing that at all.
Sounds really like a good outcome. The parking area could use something like that. It would actually be a real benefit.
Yeah, I wish I had known about this when it actually was happening, because we probably could have put a little more thought into it. So I apologize for that.
So the idea is you would scrape it off the area now and put it in the parking lot, but you'd want to leave that center area pretty bare for emergency landslides, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so any plans with the trees, you know, and maybe the trail would be off to the left and the trees off to the right, and it would be kind of all natural in the middle.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. You know, I think
so we have a conceptual drawing that was done for us by a volunteer, and that's what was depicted. Was a raised berm around the perimeter closest to the courtyard with some trees, and then over on the terrace side, the placement of some sort of random boulders to kind of define a path from the parking lot to the trailhead, and a few trees interspersed there as well, and then leaving the middle part kind of open, but with some consideration for the drainage, you know, because of the problems with erosion in the parking area.
Yeah, I like the boulder idea, because oftentimes people will block that pathway there, which is always, you know, an issue. So that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Now, at the last meeting, there was some discussion, I believe, about the chain that demarked the parking lot from the staging area. What's the status of that? That it was degraded, hanging, not in place anymore?
It's broken there, and actually there's another bollard down below, and I've already tasked the crew with fixing both of those. So hopefully we get them fixed. You know, they've been broken for a while, and I actually kind of told them to get it going as soon as possible. We are, just so everybody knows, we only have 4 right now out of 7 crew members for quite some time. So I'm looking at making some other changes that are, you'll hopefully see the outcome of them in the near future. So.
That sounds really good, Sean. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, anything else on this agenda item? Well, we have the Director of Public Works here. All right. Seeing none, moving on to the next agenda item, which is the update on the status of Bald Hill. I believe that's Jonathan.
Correct, yeah. So I don't have a lot more to report than I did last month. I've recently been in communication with the agent who's representing the owners, and the property is in fact coming up on the market at a time not yet determined, according to the agent. They're working on the marketing materials, and so it is in fact not actually for sale at this moment, but it's coming. I've also, in the meantime, been in communication, speaking with some folks in the community about it, and just kind of beginning the gearing up process for a campaign to try to save the top of the hill. So that's pretty much where it stands today.
Okay. Any discussion on this from anybody?
I'm just curious about the marketing. Are they marketing it as you could build up there?
Yes. Absolutely. And it is, in fact, you know, a residentially zoned property. The entire lot is just under 60 acres, and the zoning, which is in the town of Ross, requires a 10-acre minimum. So absolute maximum, I suppose, if you maxed out the zoning, you could be looking at 5 houses. Probably unlikely, but that is the actual zoning.
Yeah, well, I mean, Fairfax is dealing with the Wall property and the developer that's trying to build on that right now. So
Yeah, they're starting to do an environmental impact report.
Aren't there any restrictions at all on developing up on the top of a mountain like that under the town or the county rules?
Well, this would be under the zoning of the town of Ross. It's the entire property is within the town of Ross. And yeah, like any other entity, they have their building standards, and we happen to have an expert amongst us, which is Elise, who was the planning director in the town of Ross for many, many years.
They do have, I don't know how to, what entailed exactly, but there is a line that's sort of drawn at an elevation mark where above that, I think they seek to preserve the hillside. And I'm sure a project such as that, assuming it would need some sort of discretionary review, would likely need an environmental impact report, because just getting access to the site would involve so many impacts. So, but could it be developed? That's what they were, I think their planning documents anticipate that some housing would be there. I guess the hope would always be that it would be located as far down on the hillside as possible.
Yeah, so the Upper Toyon Ridge, property where the owls are, has some restrictions on it as well. Some sort of a ridge line requirement for Ross that the folks have been talking about, that doesn't allow that kind of development. So I would assume that could apply there as well.
Yeah, that's correct.
all right. Well, that actually, Paul, you'll be happy to know that that's all of our agenda items. So
Well done, Stanley.
Except open time.
well, I know we're moving, but that's all of our agenda items. So now we're
Yeah.
moving to open time.
So if I might, can I jump in with an open time matter?
Absolutely, Jonathan.
So I was contacted by the chair of the Fairfax Open Space Committee, and they are launching a fundraising project, which is going to be a nature photography virtual exhibit. But they also want to then use the photos that are going to be generated by that to design and produce and sell a calendar, a 2021 calendar. And she was asking me, this is Susan Barron, who's the chairman of the Fairfax Open Space, was asking, it was something that the San Anselmo Open Space Committee would want to join with them on. And I know it's not on the agenda, but I just wanted to let people know about that. And I'll probably circulate some of the numbers that she gave me of, what the cost would be. But, anyway.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Just like to let you know that, I know, I'm not sure if it applies to our open space, but I know in our parks, we're not allowed to do any photography.
Uh-huh.
FYI, so you might have to look into that.
Yeah. Okay. So that was one thing. Also, I wanted to just announce that it was the consensus of the co-chair of the the folks at Fairfax Open Space and myself that we postponed to next year our annual joint meeting that we normally do in August. So we're going to skip this year because of COVID-19.
So Jonathan, can I ask, how is it a fundraiser? They would sell the calendars, but who provides the photos?
They're just seeking community contributions.
Uh-huh. And Sean, you were saying that you can't take pictures of San Anselmo parks?
Yeah, it's in our code because we actually had this request before. Even any photography is usually kind of a big deal in getting a permit in San Anselmo, generally speaking. But then our parks are, I think, explicitly excluded in our code. I'm not sure how that applies to open space, if that is included or not. So just something to look into, that's all.
So what they're seeking, though, just to clarify, are existing photos. No, they're not recommending people go out and do a photo shoot.
Oh, okay, that's different then. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, I just to editorialize very sparsely here, I think it's a really good idea, and I actually sent a couple of photos that I'd taken at Sky Ranch to them, just as just for idea purposes and just as a kind of start. But anyway, I'll circulate more information about it before our next meeting.
Now,
Yeah, can I make a comment on that? This is Karen. The Marin Humane Society is actually doing something much like that. It's very interesting, is that they're actually charging they're asking for a $25 donation, and you submit, a unique and entertaining photo of your dog, your cat, your bird, whatever it is. And they say that they will select their favorite photos from all of the submissions, and they'll put them in the months, the 12 months, but any other submissions, they will also include in sort of a mosaic, a composite on the back side of other calendars, that kind of thing. So it's quite the fundraiser. They're collecting, they're making some good amount of money. And it's all, obviously voluntary, and you just, you pay $25 to submit your photo.
That's cute.
So they make money with the submissions and selling the calendars then, right?
I believe so, although everyone who submits gets a calendar. So in other words, you're basically submitting your photo and you're getting a calendar for $25.
So the Fairfax...
Just checking with the Humane Society and seeing how they're doing it, what their format is, and maybe we could possibly do something similar to that.
Yeah, but see, by doing that, the Humane Society knows how many calendars they need to print, and they have the money up front, so they're not paying for printing for calendars they're never going to sell.
Yeah, it's just a thought. Just check into it.
Well, just to finish this up, they've already drafted the invitation for submissions, and they received an estimate on production of the calendars from Kate, who designs I referred them to Kate Benton, who designs our newsletter and our invitations. Mm-hmm. And I will forward that around so that you can see, what's going on with this before our next meeting.
Thank you, Jonathan. I think Renee was raising his hand for something.
Yeah, so I wanted to follow up on the photographs about the tree cutting that I submitted, and I had a really good conversation with Sean this afternoon about this incident up there, whatever you want to call it, where there were 2 dead trees cut down in Faude Park, and Sean and I, we're going to try to work together to put together some guidelines for the future to come up with, hazard tree mitigation stuff, maybe something to do with the changing the tree ordinance to incorporate open space, and generally, I think there's also some activity going on with a couple of town council members, and you can clarify, Sean, about them looking at the tree ordinance for revising it or making it more protective on private property. But Sean and I are still trying to figure out exactly what happened, because neither of us were there when the trees were cut down, and I don't really want to get into the details of what happened, but I think the upshot of this, and I wish this would have come up in a regular agenda item, is that it sounds like Sean and I are going to make something good out of this, and it's going to improve the process, and we want to put this on an agenda item. Maybe not next month, but maybe the month after, because I'm going to be out most of until the middle of August, and I'm going to need more time to prepare this. But I'm willing to put some time into helping, craft some language, and we'll go back and forth and figure out some way to put this in writing so everybody's kind of singing from the same sheet, or following some guidelines that make sense, that also protect from imminent hazards. So I don't know. You want to say anything else, Sean, about that?
Yeah, we are working on the tree ordinance, and so I'm actually looking at making some changes to be more protective of trees on developed lots, but also some definitions maybe for, what trees are nuisance trees. And I think providing guidelines is a great idea, especially for crew and other tree companies that are out there. So I like the idea too, and I think it's something I am working on it with a couple council members and looking at trying to fix some of the holes in the tree ordinance, but also maybe having better definitions of how we're dealing with stuff in open spaces. I think it's a good idea too. So.
Wasn't there history? Wasn't there another tree that got cut down in Fade several years ago that also had kind of a similar issue? Renee?
Yeah, exactly. It's actually really close to my house down at the south end. There was a large oak, and in fact, I think it was almost 30 inches in diameter at the bottom. It was alive, and I come out there, and all of a sudden, it's they cut it down the slope, and I never really saw anything wrong with it. And there was a arborist that came out and looked at it and said, it's possibly going to fail. It was rotten on one side. It was the upslope side. And somebody made a decision, we're going to cut it down. And there was like, from when they looked at it to when it was cut down was one day, and there was no public input. And so the tree probably would still be alive today, in my opinion. We could have repaired the back of it, with some, sealed it up. The upshot of that is that we were going to have a process for having, a tree review of any of these trees that are kind of, possibly should or should not, where there's no, there's no imminent danger that this tree could have fallen onto the trail or onto the road. It was way up the slope, down below the trail. So the idea was to kind of, improve the process. And I think that's, the idea here is to now make it a little bit more formal, so we have some guidelines on what to do. Maybe have a subcommittee, or have some people go out there and see if we can agree, or we can mitigate. It's even a dead tree, just even if the tree had died, it has some value for wildlife. And all you got to do is go up to the top of Red Hill, and you see all those skeletons of the eucalyptus. And every time I go up there, I see a flock of acorn woodpeckers up there, chattering away, and they're hanging out on those dead trees. And especially newly dead trees are very valuable for birds like woodpeckers and insects, and they're great habitat. So as much as we can tolerate those from a visual standpoint, they're really good for wildlife.
Yeah, but with the fire hazard is also a consideration. So
Yeah, are we supposed to talk about this now? Or
no, we're just on open time.
Okay. Well, I can say, based upon that one tree that you just talked about, we actually did pretty much decide to leave trees that were dead or dying, as long as they weren't dangerous to the public right away or a fire hazard, to the home, things like that. So there actually are trees that have been that we've left and right. And actually, there's even one I think Brian would like us to remove up in Red Hill. And so we are leaving trees that are, before that tree, basically, if the tree was dead, dying, or dangerous, we didn't look at it in terms of, well, it's going to come out if it's, especially if it was near a road or anything. But You know, now we've completely changed that, Renee, as I told you. And I know these 2 trees came out, they were dead. If I'd known about it, you know, I was actually off for that week. And that's why I think the standards are a good idea. You know, just to, you know, make sure everybody's on the same page. But there will be trees, just so everybody knows, that I will and have to just approve, and you know, because it's an emergency. But I also like the idea for standards because there are also a lot of people removing trees that don't need to be removed. So I would agree with that too.
Thanks, Sean. I'm just curious, and again, I'm just throwing this out here because I don't know if the council, 2 council members are already looking at the existing tree ordinance. What role is open space got to do with this then?
I actually wouldn't mind some feedback from you guys. I think Renee has a lot of good points, you know, with if trees is dead, but it's not hurting anybody and it's not a threat to anybody, it does provide habitat. And it's, you know, to be honest with you, I wouldn't want to spend the money on it either. And I think we could leave it alone. I don't see any, you know, we left one alone that was cracked in half up on the Memorial Ridge Trail and it was ready to fall at any second. And we let it fall and it fell on the trail, but nobody was out there. And then we removed it when it fell. Well, so, you know, getting some feedback from you guys, I think is helpful. So that's what
Just so you know, Stan, I deal with dead tree issues a lot on my national forest work. And it's a misconception to think that dead trees are more flammable than live trees. It depends on the species, it depends on other conditions, but in general, they're less apt to catch on fire when it's dry because you don't have the small stuff that like the needles or the leaves of the tree that can catch on fire. And so, you know, a lot of times dead forests don't, you know, have been killed by beetles or something like that. They don't burn very well. So.
All right. Anything else for open time? All right.
Stan?
Yes, go ahead, Jonathan.
Just a very, very quick report on following up from our last meeting when we discussed the signs, the trail signs, and the problem we'd had with vandalism.
Right.
Public Works very graciously ordered and replaced the trail signs, the bike-related trail signs, which I prepared 2 of them for the Memorial Ridge Trail with a plywood backing to harden them, and I think Brian installed them yesterday. Is that right, Brian?
That's right.
Wow.
So that's been on the Memorial Ridge Trail. So I epoxied them to some exterior pressure-treated plywood, and then we installed them this time using bolts rather than screws, so they should be much more durable.
With the caveat that the drill you loaned me died at the top of the hill there, so I put the upper sign up with screws again. So
Let me recharge the battery. I warned you to take it out.
I did. It lasted 1.5 holes.
Well, we'll fix that.
Okay, good job, Jonathan. So the next meeting, I'm looking at a calendar here, is the 19th of August. That's the 3rd Wednesday. Same time, 7:30. I doubt we're going to be in chambers, so it'll be another Zoom meeting, I'm assuming.
That's correct.
All right. Danny, did you get everything?
I got it all.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right,
Nice
have a
to
good
meet you
evening. Have a
all.
good evening.
Thank you. Have a
night.
good month.